Hello, I'm Dr. Karen McCoy, and we're discussing session 7, which is about general dermatology. And my co-hosts here are Alex Navarini and Mara Giovanna Bianchi. Did I say that right, Mara? Okay. And so, first of all, are there any questions that are up yet on the chat?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Then maybe I could have some questions. Since David Marino is not here with us, unfortunately, I'm going to have to pick on you two. And then maybe you could have some questions for me. So, Alex, I found this very interesting. You're working with Dr. Grice, is that correct?
Yes.
He gave another presentation on the Story Forward teledermatology, which I found interesting. Who in the EU right now might be using your telepsoriasis idea, or is anyone?
Well, the Dermat2Go is certainly using it, and basically, I would wager that in every teledermatology service, there's going to be a few psoriasis patients, especially now with the pandemic. People have some experience already with teledermatology. And if there are no really important decisions to be made and treatment can just be continued, well, then teledermatology is really well suited to continue treating psoriasis patients, isn't it?
Yes, I think the issue may be, as it has been in the United States, it's still a matter of what kind of health system you have, whether efficiency is valued over payment per service. And certainly that has stopped us here in the United States, despite April Armstrong's great idea, which you also discussed. So is that happening in Switzerland?
Well, so far, our patients, they do pay upfront, basically. And they can then get the reimbursement of the consultation by their insurance company. That's how it works.
Okay.
So in that sense, it is established. However, for us physicians, we get, I think it's only a third of the actual income that we would make had we see the patient in person. And we're only willing to do that because of the special situation, because we're interested in teledermatology, obviously, and because we're so overloaded with patients anyway and long waiting times. Comparable to Professor Bianchi. Amazing. So basically, that's the reasons why we do it.
Right. Well, there's a similar issue here in places like our Kaiser Permanente, which is a health management organization. They've got a full-time teledermatologist who does about 100 a day, but that physician is salaried. So that is their job. So there's no difference in their income. But certainly we have the same situation so far here. We're on a fee-for-service basis. And I'm not sure until we have either national health systems or these increase of these health management organizations that we may see teledermatology evolve, especially in the Story Forward mechanism. So, and Mara, in Brazil, you have it easier in that do you have a national healthcare system which helps with the reimbursement for you?
Yeah. When you are working for the national health system, you have a salary. You don't have the pay for each service. But in that specific case that we worked on in that project, we were paid by lesion, not by patient. Was really different because one patient could have like 5 lesions to be evaluated. So you would have the fee was small. It was not the fee for a teleconsultation for the whole patient, but it was interesting because they decided that we should be reimbursed by lesion, not by lesion. I mean by photograph of one area.
Correct.
I mean, face. I mean $1. Let's say. Now arm $1 and things like that. But that was really specific for that project that I worked on. Here in Brazil, because of the COVID, we had to manage to do teledermatology for other reasons, for private reimbursement too. In the private section here in Brazil, we had full reimbursement, even through the teledermatology. But when it was a real time, for Store and Forward, they don't pay. They don't pay anything. The private the sector. So we had to do the real time, which I think for me, I really use the hybrid type, because when the patient gets in touch with my office, my secretary sends an email or answer all those questions, send me all those photographs, and then in another time, I do the real-time teledermatology. So it is a kind of hybrid, because I think it's the best way to see, because sometimes on the video you lose a lot of it's not so clear to see the photo. You don't have the enough time to do that. So I would rather do that way in private, but in that project was really different. Was really special.
When you do it, so you're doing it directly to the patient with the live interactive form, but you're using the telephone or the video as a primary way?
The video.
I see.
The video, yeah.
And how do you find the time spent with that versus the in-person visit?
Yeah, usually I mixed within my schedule. Sometimes half an hour for this, half an hour for that. But sometimes you're late because of any incident or anything. But I try to manage it within my schedule, not one day just for teledermatology, one day for just in person, because I don't know. I feel that this,
no, I understand.
Like this, it works for me. But I don't know. It's really personal. This.
And Dr. Navarini, when you do the telepsoriasis consults, which it sounds like it's established now in your institution for your department, correct? Do you do any interaction with the patient in terms of real time, or do you do it via still an asynchronous method?
Asynchronous. So we don't do live consultations, just because of the simple reason that we are fully booked with regular consultations, and therefore it doesn't save us time at all to make these live video consultations. On the contrary, actually, it can take even more time until everybody's connected and so on. So we believe in this asynchronous approach.
I strongly agree with you. Actually, in some of the other talks, the comment was made that video versus asynchronous visits were not preferred by most physicians. And that's certainly true in Australia when a survey was made. It said it's just easier to pick up the phone if you really have to do something real time with the patient. And my experience is that the video or telephone, I think they're all going to take more time than a store forward method, whether it's to the patient or the provider, but particularly to the patient.
It's basically the same thing. We give patients questionnaires to fill in the waiting room, the PES score, DLQI score, all these things that the patients can do without you being present. I mean, that saves time and actually gives the patients time to think as well, prepare themselves for the consultation. All these advantages are present in an asynchronous consultation, but not really in a video consultation.
I agree. And Mara, I know Brazil has been a leader in South America with teledermatology, but it's only certain states that are involved. I assume that's still the case, but were the plans before COVID to try and expand your model?
Yeah. Yes, it was really a shame, because we were in the process of expanding this project to the whole state of São Paulo, which is a lot of people. It's about 46 million people only in the state of São Paulo. And then we had to stop because there wasn't enough money to to do both things, and they decide that the program should stop. I think it's fine, because of course COVID was much more important in lives and everything, but it was a really shame. And now we have a new election next year for for president, for governor, for every single person. So you can't do anything in the year of election. So everything has to stop for a while. So it's a shame that here in Brazil, it's still a person that decides which is good for this moment, instead of being like a public policy for the state. Or it's really a shame here. But I believe we've been advertising the benefits of teledermatology here, publishing the papers and everything, to see if they can see better here. They can see the benefits that you can have with this kind of triage, this tele-triage. I was amazed by the Dr. Moreno's talk when he said it works so well there in Spain. It should work well here too.
Correct. Dr. Navarini, AI seems to be the buzzword of the day. And at the end of your talk, you spoke a little bit about incorporating that in terms of trying to get somewhere near a POSI kind of evaluation. Is that still just a research kind of thing? Do you think it would expand?
Yes, so far we don't have any validated approach for creating a POSI from patients' photos. I think that is an achievable goal, but it does take some training of the patient, and they're typically quite hard to train, as we all know.
Yes, I agree.
So we've played this through once in a project from the Novartis Foundation. It's called AI for Leprosy, where we try to make, eradicate leprosy on the world with smartphones, right? Nice project. So basically we tried to make a process where patients could image themselves with a smartphone and make a full body surface. It's really difficult to do that. And then with all the backgrounds and so on. So far, POSI from uncontrolled pictures doesn't really work, but there are some commercial applications from a company in Germany, for example, where that can do this very well. But there, the background is well controlled.
Do either of you have any questions?
There's one question in the chat from Professor Su. Teledermatology is more adapted to some systemic therapies than others. Biologics need screening in the beginning, but are some safer to prescribe? I think I could answer that. Okay. If you agree.
Yes.
So yes. So from the International Psoriasis Council actually is working on a statement. I'm leading this working group, a statement on telepsoriasis. And we also asked the members of that group whether they would prescribe, systemic treatments via teledermatology. Most of them would just prescribe topicals, but not start biologics. But once the biologics are actually installed already, then continuation of interleukin-23 antagonists and interleukin-17 antagonists, and even TNF-alpha antagonists, which I found a little surprising, that is actually proposed to be safe and can be done. So that's the answer to the question.
Great. Dr. Berguns asked about doing private teledermatology and the patient sending smartphone pictures. He questions, I think, using a dermatoscope attached to the camera to also be sent to the dermatologist. And is actually, his question is, does not having teledermoscopy compromise the diagnosis if you have that? And I think everyone who uses teledermoscopy and feels very comfortable with it would say definitely with pigmented lesions, and maybe some other things where we're using dermoscopy, that it clearly increases your confidence in a diagnosis. I'd say that's not true of the older dermatologists, at least in the United States. We were not trained in dermoscopy. and many have adopted it, but not all. So I know that when I get a patient, particularly with pigmented lesions, and some physicians won't deal with pigmented lesions at all through teledermatology because of our liability issues. But if I get something without dermoscopy, I will have a much lower threshold for sending it on to be evaluated in person. I hope that answers his question. And Dr. Oakley says that they validated their PASI on DermNet NZ. So the patients send them their PO PASI results by email. I'm not familiar with that, Alex, are you?
That's a good strategy by Professor Oakley.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So I have to go to DermNet NZ and see how that particular thing works. And it might be an idea that you could try also. So those are the main questions it looks like we've gotten. Do either Alex or Mara have any questions?
So you did a very thorough literature review, didn't you? So what's the current trend in research in teledermatology, and what's the most important achievement to do in the next few years?
Well, I think that it's clear that since COVID that things are changing tremendously in terms of policy. And I think that getting a reasonable policy for using it within each country is going to be extremely important. And Ivy Lee had an excellent discussion of the necessary steps to take for that. In addition, we're going to need it even more when we're talking about AI, where we have to figure out which of these software programs are going to be used reliably. So I think those are two of the main issues, or policy in terms of telemedicine per se, as well as AI. In terms of the adoption by the patients outside and the physicians, first of all, you have to look at the economic model for each, and that's going to be so highly variable across the world. But unless you make it worth a physician's while to do it, I don't think it's going to happen on a big scale, no matter how much the patients want it. And the patients themselves, I think, are really pushing us to try and do more. That's certainly true since COVID. So I think those are our issues, are reimbursement and policy and how to deal with AI. Do you have anything to add to that? No?
Agree.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alex and Mara, for joining us and for the questions from our audience. And now I'd like to go on to session 8. I believe it's chaired by Dr. Peter Sawyer in Old Friend.